Every holiday, I brought someone new home, hoping my family would finally see that I was happy. Somehow, by the end of the night, my cousin had charmed them, flirted with them, and made me look like the awkward third wheel in my own relationship. It happened so many times that I stopped bringing dates to family gatherings altogether. Then one Thanksgiving, she crossed a line that changed everything. Months later, I met the one woman my cousin trusted more than anyone. And when my cousin discovered that we were dating, the look on her face told me I had finally touched the one thing she could not control. My cousin Claire and I grew up only a few streets apart, so our families treated us almost like sisters. When we were children, I admired her because she was confident, funny, and fearless around people. She could walk into a room full of strangers and leave 10 minutes later knowing everyone's name. I was quieter and more cautious, so adults constantly compared us. Claire was the outgoing one while I was the responsible one. For years, I never thought much about that difference. It was only after we became adults that I began noticing something uncomfortable. Whenever I brought someone I liked to a family gathering, Claire seemed determined to become the most interesting person in the room. The first time it happened, I actually laughed about it. I'd been dating a guy named Daniel for about 2 months, and I brought him to my parents' house for a Sunday dinner. Claire arrived late, wearing the kind of confidence that made everyone turn toward her. Within 20 minutes, she had Daniel laughing at stories from her childhood. I told myself it was harmless. But before the evening ended, she had exchanged numbers with him right in front of me. Daniel stopped replying to my messages a few days later. A week after that, I saw a photograph of him and Claire together at a restaurant. I told myself it was a coincidence. Then it happened again. The next person I brought home was someone I had met through work. He was thoughtful, funny, and surprisingly shy. I had spent weeks deciding whether to introduce him to my family because I did not want to rush the relationship. Claire immediately noticed him. She started asking him personal questions, touching his arm while laughing, and making jokes about how lucky he was to have met someone like her. By dessert, I felt invisible. 2 weeks later, he ended our relationship. He said he did not think we were compatible. I did not need anyone to explain what had happened. Claire had already started following him online. The pattern continued for nearly 2 years. Different people, different holidays, same ending. Claire would become fascinated with whoever I brought, and somehow the person would lose interest in me shortly afterward. Sometimes they started talking to her. Sometimes they openly flirted with her. Once, a man I had been seeing for 3 months actually told me that Claire had more chemistry with him than I did. I remember sitting in my car afterward, staring at the steering wheel and wondering why I kept allowing the same thing to happen. My family noticed, but nobody wanted to confront her. My aunt would make excuses for Claire, saying she was naturally charming. My mother told me that I should stop comparing myself to her. My father simply told me that the right person would not be distracted by somebody else. Their advice sounded reasonable, but it did not change the humiliation I felt every time Claire turned one of my relationships into entertainment for the family. The breaking point happened at Thanksgiving. I had been dating Mark for nearly 6 months, and for the first time I believed the relationship might become serious. Mark was calm, respectful, and completely uninterested in showing off. He made me feel comfortable instead of anxious. I almost did not bring him to Thanksgiving because I was afraid of what Claire might do. But I decided I was tired of hiding my relationships because of her. At first, everything went perfectly. Mark talked with my father, helped my mother in the kitchen, and even made my grandmother laugh. I was beginning to relax. Then Claire arrived. She immediately focused on Mark. I watched her pull him into conversation, ask about his job, compliment his sense of humor, and repeatedly find reasons to stand beside him. I tried to ignore it, but then I saw her whisper something into his ear. Mark looked uncomfortable. Later that evening, I found Claire alone in the hallway. I finally told her that I was tired of watching her interfere with my relationships. She smiled and told me I was being dramatic. Then she said something that I will never forget. She told me that if my relationships were strong enough, I would not have to worry about her. I looked at her and realized she genuinely believed she had done nothing wrong. That night, Mark stayed loyal to me, but the argument had changed something. I finally understood that this was not a series of unfortunate coincidences. Claire enjoyed testing whether she could take something away from me. It was not really about the men. It was about proving that she could still control the room whenever I felt happy. A few months later, Claire started seeing a therapist named Elena. I knew about Elena because Claire occasionally mentioned her during family conversations. According to Claire, Elena was the first person who had ever challenged her instead of simply agreeing with her. Claire respected her opinion enormously. She once told me that Elena could see through people almost immediately. I did not think much about it until I met Elena by accident. Claire had invited me to a small birthday gathering, and Elena happened to be there as a guest of a mutual friend after Claire had already completed her treatment. We spoke for less than 10 minutes that night. There was nothing romantic about the conversation. Elena simply asked me why I seemed uncomfortable around my cousin. I laughed and told her that family relationships were complicated. She looked at me for a moment and said that sometimes people confuse competition with closeness. That sentence stayed with me. Over the next few months, I saw Elena several times through mutual friends. We started talking more. She knew enough about Claire to understand why I was cautious, but she never treated me like the victim in someone else's story. She asked about my own choices, my boundaries, and why I kept allowing people to make me feel responsible for their behavior. I realized that I liked being around her because I never felt like I had to compete. Eventually, Elena and I began dating, carefully and openly, after her professional relationship with Claire had ended and enough time had passed to avoid crossing professional boundaries. I knew the situation was complicated, so I did not hide it from Claire. I also did not use Elena as a weapon against her. Claire found out through a family member. She called me that evening and demanded to know whether it was true. I told her it was. There was a long silence on the phone. Then she asked why I would do something like that to her. That question almost made me laugh. I reminded her that she had spent years taking every relationship I brought into the family and turning it into a competition. I told her I had not started dating Elena to hurt her. I had started dating Elena because she was kind, intelligent, emotionally mature, and made me feel respected. Claire became furious. She accused me of deliberately choosing the one person who would hurt her most. I finally told her the truth. I had not chosen Elena because she was her therapist. I had chosen her because she was Elena. The fact that Claire trusted her did not make her property. For several weeks, our family was divided. Some relatives thought I should end the relationship to keep the peace. Others finally admitted that Claire had crossed boundaries for years. My mother privately confessed that she had noticed the pattern long before I said anything. She had avoided confronting Claire because she did not want family gatherings to become uncomfortable. Then Claire did something unexpected. She apologized. Not because she wanted Elena back in her life, and not because she suddenly approved of our relationship. She apologized because after everything that happened, she finally realized that she had spent years competing with me without ever asking herself why. She admitted that she had always felt like I was the responsible daughter while she was the difficult one. Every time I succeeded at something, she felt like she was losing. When I brought someone home, she saw an opportunity to prove that she was more desirable. She said she had convinced herself that she was simply being confident, when in reality she had been terrified of being ordinary. That confession changed the way I remembered our childhood. For years, I thought Claire had been trying to destroy my relationships because she hated me. The truth was more complicated. She had been competing with me because she was insecure about herself. That did not excuse what she had done, but understanding it helped me stop carrying the anger. Elena and I stayed together. Claire eventually moved on with her own life. We were never as close as we had been when we were children, but our family gatherings became much calmer. Nobody was watching to see who would win anymore. I also stopped bringing relationships home simply to prove something to my family. The biggest change happened inside me. I realized I had spent years measuring my happiness by whether Claire could take it away. Every time she flirted with someone I liked, I felt as though she had won. But she had only won because I had accepted the competition. Once I stopped competing, she lost the power to hurt me. People sometimes think karma means watching someone suffer exactly as they made you suffer. I used to think that way too. But my version of karma turned out to be much quieter. Claire spent years trying to prove that she could take anything away from me. Eventually, I stopped giving her that power. Elena never became a weapon against my cousin. She became the person who taught me that healthy love does not feel like a competition. It does not require you to perform, compare, or constantly defend your place. And Claire eventually learned something too. You can spend years trying to win against someone you love, only to discover that there was never supposed to be a competition in the first place. I did not get revenge on my cousin. I simply built a life she could no longer control. And honestly, that was more satisfying than revenge could ever have been.